Okay.
All right. How am I going to start?
Tell us about Germany before you left.
Okay. I was enrolled in a private girls' school from the age of 10 until 14. And I happened to be the only Jewish girl in my class. Mm-hmm. And I was everybody's friend, and everybody was my friend until the Nazis started, and they joined the Hitler Youth, and I was called to the dean's office and was told that I can no longer attend this school and had to leave.
So that day you had to clean out your desk and leave? Or just
I don't know
leave?
whether I even cleaned out my desk.
You even had a
I
desk?
just left. I just left.
And went home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were your parents home when you got home so you could tell them right away?
Well, they knew what was going on. You know, it was a rumor at first, and things got to be out of hand. And that was it. So my mother hired a lady who was teaching me English, of course, and I was 14 years old, and my mother decided that I should not stay at home. I had a job in a shoe store, and this owner of the shoe store was very strict. He was a slave driver. He didn't have much business. I had to climb up on ladders and dust all the shoe boxes. And when I got tired, I wanted to sit down, and he said, "Get up. An apprentice is not allowed to sit down."
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So that was my experience in the shoe store.
How long did that last?
Until we were ready to come to America.
2 years?
That was 2 years.
Wow.
2 years, yes. And when we finally got the papers to immigrate, it was a relief that there were so many people that were rejected through the American consulate. They were very strict in letting people come to this country. You know, it was right after the Depression, and well, we finally made it.
Because you had so much family in the States that was willing to
Well,
help?
yeah, exactly.
But your father had already died by this time?
My dad died in 1929.
You were very young.
I was 8 years old.
So your mother was raising 2 girls by herself.
Exactly. Yeah.
So she was probably really relieved to get here.
Yeah. And we also had a problem getting on the boat, my mother and I. Of all the passengers, you know, they gather them in a big hall, and your name was called as you were allowed to go on the boat. All of a sudden, some, what do they call them, SS guards in black uniforms marched into that big hall, and they yelled out my mother's name and my name to go for physical examination.
Oh.
Of all the passengers that were let out, we had to go the other way back. And from, I don't know how far it was where they took us, but we had to undress completely.
Oh.
It was very
Awful.
shameful, terrible.
Oh.
And all we heard were those foghorns from the boat, and my mother said, they're going to leave without us. You know, I was 16 years old, terribly scared. She was upset,
Yeah.
and finally they let us go. I don't know how long it took,
Right.
but finally they let us go. And we had to climb up on a very narrow ladder to get on the boat. And as soon as I took my last step, I fainted.
Oh, did you?
I just, well, you know,
Oh,
it was hard to describe, but it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So what city did you leave Germany
Hamburg.
from? Hamburg.
Hamburg. And it was, at that time, we were allowed to go first class because at that time we were still passengers on the ship, you know. Yeah. So of course I was seasick the whole time.
How long was the time on the boat to New York?
6 or 8 days on the boat. Yeah.
And then you got to New York, and then
Got to New York.
and then where did you go?
Took
Directly
yeah, not only that, we arrived New Year's Eve, and a friend of ours happened to be, he was a salesman, he happened to be in New York, so he picked us up on the boat, and before we boarded a train to come to Cleveland, it happened to be New Year's Eve. Took us to Times Square. I never saw so many people in all my life. And everybody looked up and I thought, what in the world is going to come down from the sky? I had no idea what was going on.
Wow. What a way to come to the country for the first time.
Yeah.
And then you took the train to Cleveland.
Took the train to Cleveland, and Uncle Herman happened to be there waiting for us.
Oh, good.
Uh-huh.
What year?
That was 37.
37. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then you went to his house first and stayed with him for a while?
No, he came from Ottawa. He lived in Ottawa, but he happened to be in Cleveland. He wanted to meet us.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
So he took you to somebody else's house in Cleveland?
Well, my sister had a house here in Cleveland. Mhm.
And you stayed with her for a while.
Yeah.
Was she already married by then?
Yeah.
So that's how you met her brother?
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Well, it so happened that this is a long story. Eric and Armin came in 1923, right after their mother died. And let's see, Eric was working in Lima with the uncles. I don't know what kind of they also had a men's store, I think, somewhere in Lima. They also had a loan company. I don't know, but anyhow, the Depression started and everybody lost their job. So Eric decided to go back to Germany. That was in 34. 34, yeah.
Wow.
Because he lost his job. And then, of course, when Hitler came, since he was an American citizen at that time already, he had no trouble coming back to America.
Wow.
And while he was in Germany, that's when he and my sister met. They became engaged, and he was able, when he came back here, he was able to call for her as his fiancée. And so this is how the whole thing started.
So how many years did she come before you came?
Must have been 34, 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he came back.
Wow.
What do you remember as your first experiences here?
When I was here,
Yes.
I don't know, everybody was extremely friendly. You know, coming from Germany, where you were considered an enemy, you know, people were so outgoing that they really, I started school here, and I couldn't get over how friendly everybody was, how helpful everybody was. And of course, my English wasn't all that good. It was school English.
Mm-hmm.
And if I made a mistake in talking, they didn't laugh. They just corrected me. This was really a very pleasant feeling.
And helpful and
Right.
How much time were you able to spend with Herman and Sig?
I don't think he stayed here very long.
Mm-hmm.
He just came to greet us, and I don't think he stayed very long.
But you made trips to Ottawa?
Yes. Whenever, you know, there were cousins who lived in Lima, and there was also their sister. Her name was Lucille Eckstein. She lived here in town, and they came to visit. So a lot of times they took me along and took me to Ottawa.
How much time would you spend there then?
Not too long.
Like a weekend
Until
or?
somebody brought me back home.
What do you remember about Ottawa?
Uncle Six's daughter, Marge, she invited a bunch of girlfriends to go to Lima, and naturally she took me along, and we went to a hamburger place. So she said to me, "What do you want on your hamburger?" So I didn't know. What's a hamburger? And what could I want on it, you know? So I didn't know what. I had never seen a hamburger. Yeah, everything was unfamiliar to me.
yeah.
Do you remember the clothing store in Ottawa?
I don't think I was ever in it. I was in their home, but I was
Never
never
went
in
to
the
the
store.
Oh, okay.
Mm-mm.
So after you graduated school here,
Well, I graduated high school, and I graduated beauty school, and I went to work in a beauty shop.
and you had it how many years?
When I think back, everything happened so fast.
Wow.
You know, yeah. I never had a vacation. You know, I just kept going from one thing to another.
Tell us again, you told us before about when you purchased the beauty shop.
well, I worked there for maybe 6 months before this man had a heart attack. And during the 6 months, I had a nice following. So to me, there was no problem that I was able to take it over.
That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Then you were how
And
old?
at that time, the widow, I paid off the shop as I was able to pay so much monthly to her.
That was nice that they
Uh-huh.
made that work out.
Well, yes,
Then you were how old?
21.
And what did everyone say?
Well, somebody asked me, while I was in business, somebody said, how come you never got married? And I figured, I'm not that old.
They were surprised a woman would own her own business at that time also.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
So at 21 you were a business owner. And you had how many employees?
2 others.
2 others.
There were 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And one stayed for 40
One stayed
years.
with me all that time. As a matter of fact, she did had a nice clientele of her own, but she had cataract surgery, couldn't drive anymore. She lived on the other end of town. I picked her up and took her home all the time.
Did you?
Yes. Mhm.
Wow.
How old were you when you married?
26.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you were well established in the business by that
Oh,
time.
yes, of course, of course.
And what business was he in?
Pardon me?
What business your husband was in?
Herman had restaurant supply.
Was he employed or was he
He
self-employed?
was a partner with a larger group of people.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So did you see Martha very much growing up? I mean,
No,
no.
not at all.
Because they
No.
were in,
I mean, she was, I think I'm closer to Mary Bob than I was to Martha.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. Of course, Martha lived I think she lived in Fremont for a while. And somewhere in Michigan.
Michigan, right.
Uh-huh.
What are your memories of Sig? What are your memories of Sigmund?
That I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Just Herman?
Do you remember them ever talking about having family in Cincinnati?
Well, of course, Anne Friedel, and her husband. There was Walder and Irwin.
Yeah.
We were always very close. Uh-huh. Walder always called me the youngster. I was always the youngest one in the family. So
Oh,
now I'm the oldster.
now you're the oldster.
Well, Irwin learned the butcher trade in Germany. And I don't know, he left way before Hitler. And he worked for, I don't know what the meat people were in Cincinnati, but it was a big manufacturer of sausage, cold cuts and stuff like that.
Cons?
Yeah, I think you worked for
And
Cons.
yeah, and then when Aunt Friedel and Uncle Leo came to Cincinnati, they brought a lot of machinery along. And I was always very interested in the way he grew. And Elaine, his wife, she drove the truck. She delivered the sausage to the different restaurants.
Oh, really?
And yeah, she was very helpful to him. And he, every time I went to visit in Cincinnati, I always saw his larger factory.
Mhm. So you saw Judy when she was little. Mhm.
When did you see our father, Bob?
I'm not sure, but you know, my nephew Bob, they lived in Dayton, and he got friendly with Janet Ganger.
Mhm.
I don't know what her married name was. Do you?
Villela.
Well, Villela, yes. And that's how I remember Bob when he was in Ottawa, but he never remembered me, you know. We were not that close.
Mm-hmm.
And since Bob and Janet got together, we also started to meet Bob in Middletown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he kept in touch with us.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you had seen him when you were younger, much younger.
Mm-mm. No.
Earlier you had said, I can't remember if you said it was Herman or Sig. I guess it was Herman had said something to you that upset you.
Sig.
Sig said
Sig.
that.
You know, he took out his wallet and he was sort of counting his money. So he said, in America, people don't ask for money. They earn it. And he wanted to give me $1 or whatever it was, and I refused it.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel strange why he would do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he meant that as a lesson, some type of lesson?
I don't think he was, I don't know why he was saying that, but I know I would never ask for $1 or whatever it was.
Is there anything else you can think of to say about anything that they ever said to you, or anything
Well, one
else
thing
about
I remember, I started school, and the teacher asked me something. I wanted to answer her, and she says, "Never mind." And I figured, why should she say that to me? I always minded, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that meant. She didn't want to call on me, but I didn't know what that meant. Why she said, "Never mind." Why would she say that to me?
Yeah.
You know, you interpret everything a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Slang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's a lot. Can you think of anything else?
Is there anything else about the Wise family that you can think of that people might want to know?
I don't know. Well, you know, there were these cousins in Lima. Abe had a lot of kids. So did Julius. And Armin and Eric were, when they first came, they were very close to these cousins. But later, when they got married, they sort of drifted apart.
Hmm.
There was one, Jerry Weiss,
Mm-hmm.
Jerome.
I remember
What's his
hearing
name?
about him.
He was killed in an accident.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And Ruth Wise, his wife, was very friendly with Richard in Cincinnati.
Oh, I remember meeting her.
I met her, yes.
Yeah.
I remember that.
They lived near each other, I think, too, for a while.
Oh.
In Cincinnati. Yeah.
Did you know Bert?
Sure.
What can you tell us about Bert?
Well, Bert lived here in Cleveland. He had, I think he had a shoe store, and later on he sold insurance. He was not a very good insurance agent. He sold me all kinds of insurance for the beauty shop. And no matter what happened, he claimed I was not insured for it. So he didn't put in a claim. One time, there was a very bad thunderstorm and my awning got torn. And he came to look at it and he said, this was not caused by the storm. It's vandalism and you're not insured for vandalism.
And he was family.
And family. And then Armin and I had quite a discussion. So I said to Armin, you know, I hate to do this, but I've got to have a better insurance person.
Absolutely.
So Armin said, Armin didn't want me to do it because he was an uncle. And and I did it anyhow because I paid a lot of premiums for what?
Exactly.
I mean, I didn't want to cash in on anything that I didn't need to, but I felt if I pay for insurance and something happens, I must put in a claim.
Sure.
Boy.
Yeah. We were driving somewhere along the way here in town, and some trucking company sideswiped us. And at that time, I called Uncle Bert and told him about it. So he said he's going to put in a claim. Nobody came to look at the car or anything, but anytime I called or Armin called, he says, it's taken care of. So this happened early in the year. Came the end of the year, I called the insurance company, wanted to find out what's happening. So they said, how come you waited all this time? This is actually too late to even investigate. And these are the things that irritated me.
Yeah, that's very irresponsible of him.
Well, I don't know. He didn't want anybody to put in a claim, or maybe especially us.
So you finally dropped him?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see
And
him?
of course, we were disowned by him from that time on.
You never saw him after that?
We were visiting him and Aunt Carrie all the time. This was never mentioned, but...
When did he pass away?
That's hard for me to say, but not only that, he didn't even have health insurance. He sold insurance, but he was, I don't know what maybe he had a cancer problem. I don't know. But he was in the hospital for a long time with no insurance.
Then they never had any children?
No.
Interesting. I think for many years my father would not have anything to do with Richard in Cincinnati.
Why?
And I think it was because Richard was pushing him every time he spoke with him to buy his insurance.
Oh. I can understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was. And then many years later, about 1988, they reestablished contact.
Oh.
And then they were friendly.
Well, I think your dad and Walder were very close. Walder lived in Miami.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And Irvin, he was
And
always
would
very friendly with Irvin.
They were on.
Yeah.
They talk on the phone a lot.
Uh,
But he was in Cincinnati, so they
well,
didn't see each other very much. But they called.
Exactly.
But that's what.
Well,
was,
Irvin was a very warm person. He was very outgoing.
I remember him some.
Hmm
I remember.
I remember I was visiting there. I even think it was before I even had my beauty shop, and Irvin was quite a gambler.
oh, really?
He liked to go to Kentucky,
Mhm.
and he took me. I think one place was the Lookout House or something
Yeah.
like that.
Good memory.
Uh-huh.
That's still there, or at least it was.
I had never been in a gambling place at
Mhm.
one time. So Irvin comes up to me. He said, "How many chips do you want?" So I didn't have much money with me. So I said, "How about $1's worth?" So he laughed. He said, "You can't buy less than $5 worth." And I think that's about all I had with me. And so reluctantly, I gave him my $5. And Elaine liked to gamble. She liked to play the roulette. And I sat next to her, and I almost put all my $5 in eventually. And finally, I got $5 back. I felt so rich that I didn't lose any money.
So relieved, yay!
Yeah, that was my gambling outing.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. Our dad liked to gamble too, but he always did okay with it.
Well,
And he only did it like every other year when he went to Vegas.
oh really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Didn't Bud go with him on some of his
A
trips?
couple of times, but usually Dad went to Vegas every other year for a
No, but I mean
trucking.
out of the country.
Yeah, they went on a few trips.
They went to Spain together. It was the first time, the first big trip they had even taken, either one of them. And all the photos, it was funny. I was real small. I think it was 68 maybe. And what I remember was two things. Was one, every picture that Dad took, he got the back of Uncle Bud's head because Bud was always in front of him taking the picture. And the other thing was, it was like The Odd Couple, you know the story? You know, Bud was neat and perfectly dressed and everything and all packed and everything, and Dad was just the truck driver, just everything thrown together.
Casual.
So they were like The Odd Couple, so it was pretty funny. But they went to Hawaii together too, I think.
Didn't your mother go with him
I went more
on
than
those
one.
trips?
She would not fly.
She didn't want it. She was afraid to fly.
She was 65 years old when she took her first plane ride.
Oh.
She had wanted to go to England her whole life. And she finally reached the conclusion she was never going to be able to go unless she got over her fear of flying.
Mm-hmm.
So at 65, she took a plane ride from Dayton, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio. So up and down. And found out there was nothing to
I
it.
said, "Mom, did you have a drink?" And beforehand, and she said, "No, but I took an aspirin."
Oh.
So then she learned there was nothing to it.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to England, and then she would travel with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. They had a very good time for many years. And then, in fact, she was annoyed when someone would ask her about her fear of flying because, there's nothing to it.
Oh.
You know. So I'm sure she regrets that she hadn't done more sooner.
Well, she had a heart condition, and she told her doctor that she was afraid to fly. So he said, "Well, then you should never do it,"
Yeah,
Oh.
that too.
which
Yeah.
didn't help her But finally she realized that if she didn't start flying, besides wanting to go to England, she wasn't going to be around my dad much because he was winding down his work and was going to travel more and more and more. And she figured she better get it together. And she did.
They were able to take some very nice trips to the Caribbean in the winter. Grand Cayman
They
Islands.
came out to see me in Portland
Yeah, they
every
went.
year.
And then one year they took a nice tour to Newfoundland. I can't remember what else. I think that might be it.
They just went around. They went to Florida more and
Yeah.
did some, but they probably drove there. I don't know. Anyway, but they came to Portland every year.
Oh, really?
What traveling have you done
Not much.
with work?
Well, yeah, we had, I think, 3 cruises, the Caribbean, and that was the only time I went out of the country. I never needed a passport. I just never wanted to travel out of the country, except these cruises, you know, you could just... And this person came up, and I was just a little kid at that time. He had a bag of dirt, and he sprinkled it on our good rock, and I was upset.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then it was like a miracle when he pushed
Showed you
and
how
pulled it up. Yeah.
How the vacuum cleaners work. Yeah. How dare you put dirt on
Oh, I was so upset.
that? Aww.